What is up, everyone? I have already done my spoiler-free review for The Batman. Go check that out. We go into the positives, the negatives, which there weren't many negatives for this movie. There was like one little thing I was able to come up with, and it wasn't even a big deal, to be completely honest. And I gave a rating out of 10. So go check that out if you want to see those thoughts, spoiler-free thoughts. This is just going to be about the stuff that I couldn't talk about in that video, like anything that has any spoiler in, anything that I didn't want to mention, anything that should be saved for the full movie experience yourself, something you shouldn't know before going into it. That's kind of what we're going to talk about here. We're going to actually talk about some specific plot details and just my thoughts on some of these plot details. And it's pretty much all positive. There's actually one thing that we're going to talk about a little bit later that I'm not crazy about, but it was not a negative for the movie. It was more of just a general thing that I'm kind of worried for the upcoming Batman films. But for this one, it didn't really make a negative effect on it at all, to be completely honest. So the first thing I want to talk about is the opening, because the opening is special to me. Like, this was, in my opinion, one of the best openings of any comic book movie ever, because it was pretty simple, right? And it essentially showed very, very well that Gotham fears Batman, like, more than anything else in the damn city, which is exactly what Batman should be. And I talked about that a little bit in my other review, how I really liked how the concept of fear was brought up so substantially in this film. But the way they were able to do that in the beginning by showing a bunch of criminals robbing banks and stuff, not robbing banks. One dude like robbed a little convenience store. Some other guy was doing some criminal stuff. And you kept waiting for Batman just to pop out of nowhere and like take him out, like, you know, typical comic book movie fashion. But no, they were just afraid just by looking in the sky and seeing the bat symbol, and I thought that was awesome. And the commentary that Bruce Wayne gives throughout the film, I actually really liked. It wasn't too much, like it wasn't in your face like some other films where it's kind of like the prominent part of the film is the fact that it has that commentary, but this one was subtle, and it was only thrown in there in certain moments, and I thought it worked really well, and it made sense because he was writing a journal through his Batman journey, and I thought that was actually really cool. It made sense that he would do something like that, and he was describing in this opening scene that essentially he can't be everywhere, which is obvious, he can't. So it would be a little ridiculous if every time someone did some sort of a crime, he just happened to be there. Like, that would have been ridiculous. So I loved how they made it so that wasn't the case, and instead they were just afraid of even the possibility of him being out there, and it was brilliantly done for that entire opening scene. And then the one group he does come across, oh my god, that was the scene that we saw in the first teaser when he beats down those guys, or literally one of the guys, and then the other guys just started fighting him, which every time someone tries to fight Batman in this movie, I'm like, are you stupid? Like, look at this man. You see that? I would be running in the other direction. But it was really cool how when he like showed himself, you just hear it. You hear the footsteps, and they all kind of look into the darkness, and he just slowly comes out of there. Like, his walking is really loud. Like, I love how they made his footsteps so loud, the way his boots kind of like clamp against the floor. I think that was brilliantly done. So the opening scene, perfect. Pretty much perfect. And we get the Nirvana song pretty much in the opening as well when he's heading back to the Batcave, and the way they introduced the Batcave in this was awesome. Like, the way he drives with his motorcycle through, and just seeing that is exactly what the first movie should be, because assuming we're going to be in this universe for a lot of films, let's assume we're going to have 5 more films or something in this universe, it's really important that they show us a lot about this world and explain it to us, because this is not an origin film, not like Batman Begins where it was completely an origin movie. This is not an origin movie. What I think was really important is that they constantly showed us stuff and introduced it to us, because they know it's the first time we're seeing it. They're letting us know, okay, this is what the Batcave looks like, this is how he enters the Batcave, this is what Wayne Manor looks like, this is what like different places looks like within this film. And that's really important, because one thing that I have an unpopular opinion about this, for Spider-Man Homecoming, I was really disappointed that we weren't getting an origin story for that film. And I know we've seen it 2 times already in live action, why do we have to see it again, right? But I always felt like, well, it's a different interpretation of the character, it's a different version of him, so sometimes seeing his origin is important, and that film didn't give us that, right? But the reason why I don't care that this film didn't give us that is because they still did a great job of introducing us to everything, and they even did a lot of things within the story that tie back to his origin in a million ways. Now, I will say Spider-Man No Way Home kind of fixed some of my issues with that, the way they kind of talked about a lot of the things that I wanted them to talk about in Spider-Man Homecoming, like, for example, Uncle Ben, bringing that up, or talking about, the whole idea of responsibility and seeing that unfold. And Spider-Man No Way Home thankfully fixed that, but that was 3 films in, right? This is very different, where they already, right off the bat, did exactly what an origin should do for Batman. This is, to me, not an origin to Batman, but it's an origin to a new version of Batman coming later, because this is an early Batman. He's only, year 2, year 1? So I really like how he still has this just rage in him over everything that happened in the past, and the way the film kind of ends with him realizing that he doesn't need to be vengeance anymore. He doesn't need to be that. That's not what Gotham needs. What they need is justice. I don't think he says it those exact words, but he says something along the lines of that's what they need, essentially. They don't need this person just to take out a bunch of criminals in rage. They need people to be protected and helped, so you don't have situations like Riddler, who decides to be terrible because he's been under tremendous disadvantages throughout his entire life for certain things. And I love how that kind of contrasts against each other with Batman and Riddler, and how both of them have similar backstories and motivations. Both of them are tired of the corruption of Gotham. Both of them have had troubled pasts, but as Riddler says, his past was much worse because he didn't have money, right? And so that's what he was talking about to Bruce. He was like, you're not an orphan because you have money and all that, which I thought that was, we'll talk about that scene in a little bit, because I think that's the best scene, one of the best scenes in the whole movie. It's hard to say what's the definitive best scene in the movie, but that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, is that interrogation scene with Riddler. And I love how both the characters, they're kind of different. They're just doing what they want in different ways, right? Riddler had this big mischievous plan to destroy the city, essentially, and kill a bunch of people, and that is obviously not a good way to take out your anger. But Batman's doing it in a healthier way, maybe, but it's still vigilante type stuff. But it's just really cool to see that contrast. I always love when a villain is the same as the hero, just doing what they want to do differently, right? But their motivations are kind of similar, and almost their goals are kind of similar. And in that way, you kind of understand Riddler, but you're still no, you're still crazy, and you're still killing innocent people. You know what I mean? And I like how they did that, just like they were able to do with Joker in the Joker film. You kind of understand where he's coming from, you understand his perspective, but you're no, dude, you're still killing people, so that's not a good way to find the solution you're looking for. But the solution he's looking for is not necessarily a bad one. He's just looking for people to not be left alone, for people not to be left on the side of the street if they don't have money. And that whole concept is consistently being brought up in this film, and I think it was pretty well done. Also, the way this whole mystery tied back to Bruce's past, I think, was great as well, because again, we don't see his parents dying, which we've seen a million times. So yeah, we didn't have to see that scene again, but they still allowed us to understand this version of Bruce's feelings towards what happened, and it done that very well. I mean, the whole big part of the film was about that, and then learning about certain things about his father with Falcone, and how the reason why he died was essentially connected to the fact that he had someone killed because of dirt on his hands. And Alfred kind of, clarify what actually happened, which I believe Alfred. I think Alfred was telling the truth in that scene. And I like how he clarified that to Bruce to kind of make him feel better, because in that moment he was pissed. The fact that he learned that his father's death was because, and his mother's death was because he got someone to kill someone because they had dirt on their family. Now, again, that ties into all the corruption and stuff that goes on in this city, but it was nice to hear that that wasn't exactly the case. I still believe Alfred in that case. I hope it was true. And again, learning about all this stuff is good, because we still keep that origin of Batman in mind, even though we don't actually see his first, starting of Batman in this film. We don't see his early moments. We don't have to. That's the thing. We don't have to. It feels like an origin in a lot of ways, but it's not. And I think that's what was handled pretty much perfectly. And the way they did all the world building as well was great because, again, if we see more films, which we obviously will, it's going to be nice to kind of already get an idea as to what this Gotham is like and how it works. And they did a great job, especially with the Penguin stuff, because we're going to get a Penguin show. So seeing all the stuff with Penguin was great because that kind of showed us some of that, you know, criminal mob stuff that goes on in Gotham. So I thought that was awesome. Now I wanted to get into everything with the Riddler. I've been talking nonstop about Riddler because he is probably my favorite part of the movie. One of my favorite parts. I really love this villain, man. I don't know what it was. I think it was a combination of Paul Dano's acting and, again, the contrast between Batman and their motivations and stuff. And I just thought it was just brilliantly handled. The way he's not a typical villain. He's not. And I saw some people, I was reading some reviews, and a lot of reviews, I mean, you're entitled to your own opinion completely, but some reviews were like, I want to see Batman face off against Riddler. Why didn't they do that? That's anticlimactic. Like, not every villain, in my opinion, needs to be this fighting villain. And Riddler is clearly not that, at least this version of Riddler, right? There's certain villains that are that. Someone like Bane, of course you're going to see him fight against Batman in the end. You know, if you have someone like, if you have Killer Croc in a Batman film, of course you're going to have him fight against Batman. But Riddler, no, he's just like Joker in that way. Joker is not the type of villain to be fighting. He could, and usually he uses his fun little gadgets to fight, which is fine, but he's not necessarily like one-to-one, like hand-to-hand, because he's getting his ass kicked. Like, we know Joker would get his ass kicked by Batman. He does. Look at The Dark Knight. He gets his ass kicked. The only time he actually can do anything is when he has his goons helping him, or he has some crazy gadget that's going on. And Riddler is kind of a similar way. And it's not his physicality that's dangerous. It's his mind and his insanity and this big plan he had and how he thought everything through. And it worked, and the fact that it worked was really surprising to me. The fact that his plan kind of went to fruition, it didn't 100% work because it didn't do as much damage as he wanted to do, but he still flooded the whole city. And that was really cool when the whole scene happened with the flood walls breaking. I went back to the trailers and they showed all this in the trailers. So a lot of scenes in this film were shown in the trailer, and I just forgot about it when watching the film. I was like, I didn't even think about it while I was watching the movie, so I wasn't able to predict it. But they do show the seawall breaking in the trailer, and that was awesome. That was awesome, seeing that whole scene go down. I'm kind of just going out of order here for talking about the film. That's usually what I do in these spoiler reviews. Just go on some rants about a bunch of things. But I loved that. I absolutely loved how the whole city was flooded there, and that made for a really awesome final battle. I saw some people saying the final act was a little underwhelming because after his plan was already finished, it was like, well, now he just has to go kick some goons' asses and he calls it a day. I could kind of understand that, but I think it was still really beautifully done, especially when Batman takes that final leap to cut off that cord to stop the wire from going into the water. So obviously electrocute a bunch of people, and he kind of goes out to save the new mayor and save a lot of the other people in there. And they're kind of like afraid of him at first, but then they start to, you know, take his hand, and you see how exactly what he's saying. It's not about attacking criminals, it's also about helping the good, right? And that's exactly the whole point of this film, and that's the whole point of that really impactful moment at the end there where he's now helping people. So it's not just about hurting, it's also about helping. Like, he has to do a little bit of both, but he's only been hurting. Let's be real here. He's been spending the past year just going out and beating the shit out of anyone who does anything somewhat criminal. Like, that's what Batman usually is. But I also love the helping side of him, where he's also just doing good things for people. And this is the first time we actually see him do that in this film, was saving those people in the water. So I think the final act was incredible for that alone. So I didn't have any issues with that at all. And I love how much of a horror film this felt like, especially with a lot of the Riddler's kills. Of course, it being PG-13, they couldn't show a bunch of blood and gore, but it was teetering the line a little bit. I mean, you didn't have to see it all to still feel it, and a lot of those scenes were pretty freaking gruesome. The one that I loved the most, and one of my favorite scenes in the movie, I keep saying favorite scenes because there's a lot of favorite scenes here, was when he put the bomb around that one guy's neck. I think his name was Coulson, and he drives through to the funeral, and that whole scene where Batman's in there, because he has no fear of dying, of course, we know that. So he's in there, and he's like, whatever, let's just try to figure this out. And Riddler giving him 3 riddles to solve, and if he solves the 3 riddles, he'll keep him alive. And the fact that he wasn't able to do the last one because he did not want to be a rat, and he knew if he was going to be a rat, it would end up getting him killed anyways. So he was like, screw it, whatever, I'm fucked. And the explosion and everything. Another thing that happened in the trailer, the explosion with Batman flying, that was in the trailer. That was actually in the first trailer, I think. I mean, was it? I don't remember. It was in one of the trailers. And I just completely forgot about it. So when I was watching the film, I was like on edge that whole scene. I'm like, holy shit, is this going to explode? Is he going to save him? I don't know. And when it happens, it was crazy seeing him fly back and stuff. I think maybe they made a bit of an issue there because this part was still really exposed with Batman. You'd think that would at least get somewhat damaged. I feel like they could have put some bruises on his chin, but his bruise looks completely clean. Small nitpick. I didn't even mention that in my other review because it's a stupid nitpick. Like, I don't really care that much, but I'm just saying I feel like there should have been some bruises on his chin because he was like right in front of that bomb. Of course, his Batman armor protected him, but the chin isn't really protected, so you'd think there would be some bruises there. I don't know, maybe some cuts. It doesn't really matter to me all that much, like I said. And then getting into how they eventually get Riddler and how they secure him, just like 7. In a lot of ways, that felt just like the movie 7. And that's kind of what a lot of people were comparing this movie to before going into it, so I thought that was pretty cool. And I love 7, so anything that's going to be even close to 7 is going to be awesome to me. And when they bring him in, the interrogation scene, oh my god, I love this scene. I love the interrogation scene with Riddler so damn much, man. The intensity in that scene when he's revealing his big plan to Batman was just... It's his acting, it really is. I love crazy characters and how people can perform those crazy characters. So that's one of the reasons I love Joker as a whole, because all interpretation Joker is very crazy, so the actor can just have a blast with it and just be absolutely insane. And I think Paul Dano was able to do the same thing with Riddler here, which was awesome. So I absolutely love that. And another scene I want to mention is when he sees that Alfred is in danger because of the fact that Riddler was now targeting Bruce Wayne, and we see Batman just rush back to his home to save Alfred, and it's like he already finds out. And I honestly thought Alfred was dead there, and I was gonna be like really disappointed because I'm like, wait, we have like probably like way more films left in this franchise. You're telling me you're gonna kill off Alfred right now? So I was a little like, what? I was confused. But no, he didn't die, thankfully. He was just in the hospital. And that scene in the hospital was freaking great. Like I said, I mentioned it before how Alfred was clarifying what exactly happened with his father, but I loved how Bruce was telling him that he doesn't fear death, he just fears the death of others, the people he cares about. And that was a beautiful scene, especially because earlier in the film he was telling Alfred that you're not my dad, so stop telling me what to do, because he was trying to get him to kind of be more involved in the Bruce Wayne side of his personality and actually do some like philanthropy type stuff, but he just wants to do his Batman stuff, right? And he was kind of just being a dick to Alfred. And I love how in that scene he tells Alfred, you know, I care about you a lot, and I would be devastated if you died, and I was very scared for you. And you see him smile. Like that alone made Alfred's character in this film worth it. He wasn't in a lot of the film, but I love that film. I've always been a big fan of Alfred. I don't know what it is. I love like fatherly, motherly type characters as superheroes. I always have. I love Aunt May. In a lot of the films, I always emphasize how important Aunt May is to those movies, and no one ever gives a shit. Everyone always is like, oh no, who cares about Aunt May? I think Aunt May is one of the most important parts of those damn movies. That's why I was really disappointed with the Aunt May in the Homecoming trilogy, because she was reduced to just Happy's fuck buddy pretty much throughout the films, and I was like, give her more to do. And they did in No Way Home, obviously, but I just want to see more of her, because I think she's one of the most important characters to Spider-Man's character. Same way I think Alfred is one of the most important characters to Batman's character. And nobody else gives a shit, it seems, but I do. So I love that scene thoroughly. The last thing I want to talk about for this spoiler review, the last thing I really want to go into, there's a lot of other things I could talk about. Obviously, we didn't talk about Catwoman or Penguin because I talked about those in my other review. I didn't really have any spoilery type things to mention. Obviously, you have the reveal that Catwoman was Falcone's daughter. I thought that was fine. Like, I didn't have an issue with that. I thought that was an interesting twist, but I didn't really necessarily think it was that interesting to talk about in this video, so I just didn't mention it. Last thing we gotta talk about is, of course, the Joker tease at the end. This surprised the hell out of me. When I was actually watching it, I'll be completely honest, I didn't realize it was supposed to be Joker at first. It took me a little bit to realize that, because when I saw it, they didn't show it very clearly. It was like kind of hard to see who it was, and I was starting to think it was Two-Face just because he looked like he had a burnt like face. So I was like, oh, was that Two-Face? And when he mentioned a clown, I was like, okay, that could be Joker, but that could also just be like a Easter egg. And then the laughing at the end, I was like, oh, okay, that's Joker. That's Joker. And then I find out later that that's actually Barry Keoghan, I believe is his name, who was in Eternals. I've only seen him in a couple of films before, but apparently this was reported months ago. I just never heard of it. I'm glad I didn't hear of it because it was a surprise, but months ago, as was reported, I watched some videos. People were already talking about this months ago, so I had no idea. This is one thing that I'm a little iffy on, though. Like, it's not a negative for the film at all. I don't have any issue with it in the movie, but I have an issue with it for future films if he actually appears in the next one. Only because, am I the only one who's a little bit, like, I want to see other characters? You know what I mean? Like, I love Joker. He's my favorite comic book villain of all time. One of my favorites. But we've seen so many. Like, he's always there. I know he's the arch nemesis. Of course, we have to see him a lot, but like all the time though, like we've seen him. I think we've had, like, let me think, a lot of interpretations. If you include TV shows and games, like there's been an insane amount of interpretations of Joker over the years. I'm okay with another one, but I was hoping maybe to save that for like the third film or something. I don't really want that in the second one. I was hoping for something else, but then again, they could do multiple villains. They could make that work. I could definitely see them doing a Mr. Freeze and Joker thing. But then again, what they could be doing, and if this is what they're doing, I'm completely fine with it, just opening up the world of this new Batverse, right? I'm going to call it the Batverse. This new Batverse, this new thing they're creating, which is a grounded, gritty take on Batman. There's no other superheroes there. It's just going to be Batman, which is exactly what I want. They're going to just open it up and just reveal a bunch of people, right? They're already doing the world building. We already did it with Penguin, but they're just starting to do that a little bit more. And if they do that, and that's the whole point of this tease, I'm okay with that. Keep Joker in Arkham Asylum for the whole second film. Maybe have one more scene with him in there, just as a little tease, but don't have him be the main purpose of the film. Have it be Mr. Freeze or someone else that, you know, Matt Reeves wants to do. Because even in this film, Penguin was in it, but he wasn't the main focus. He was not the main villain. It was obviously Riddler. But of course, Penguin was still there, and kind of just to show some of the world building here. And they could still be doing that with other villains. And when you really think about it, how many villains could they do from the Batman villain, you know, all the Batman villains out there? How many could they do that are grounded and gritty? Because there's a lot of villains that I just don't think it's possible to. And I think Joker's one of the ones that it's very easy to do in a realistic take. So I understand why they would want to do Joker. I think Mr. Freeze can definitely be done in a gritty way. But then you think of some other ones like Clayface and Killer Croc. It's like, no, there's no way those can be like in any way, shape, or form gritty or serious. I don't know. I have no idea what their future plans are. But this is not necessarily a negative. It's just a little bit of a worry. I hope that Joker's not the main villain of the second film. I would be okay with that for the third film, though. I wouldn't be the end of the world. It would just be like, oh, I'd prefer someone else. But again, if they did happen, as long as it's done well, cool. And Barry Keoghan, I mean, I haven't really seen him in that much stuff. The stuff I have seen him in, he hasn't really done anything like that groundbreaking. So I have to check out some of his other work to really get an idea as to whether or not he would be a good Joker. I have no idea. That would never have been my first choice. I kind of prefer a little bit of an older Joker, like in his 40s or 50s, but I can take a Joker that's really young. I mean, this dude's like, what, late 20s, early 30s maybe? I can deal with that. I'm not like against it. It gives us the ability to see the Joker throughout multiple films, I guess. We don't have to just, you know, have him in one film and then have that be it. We can have him for multiple films, which I think would be interesting. So I'm okay with it. It's just a little bit of a worry here and there if they make him the main focus of the second film, I guess is my opinion. I'm still curious to see if we're going to see a Joker 2 with Joaquin Phoenix. I would love to see that, but now that they're doing this universe, I don't even know if it's necessary to go back to that other universe because it's its own separate thing. I was always hoping they would work that into this somehow, but I don't think that's really possible with the time period, so whatever. I'm going to end it there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I will see you all in my next one. Peace out.